when we can put ego aside and not be like, I'm right, or differing opinions, and be like, oh, we're all people. We're living on the same planet. What can we build together? Because it's so much easier to create an energy of cooperation. Like, okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to clean the planet? Do we want to regrow forests? And it's so easy when we all come together.
They're attracted to your authenticity because you're creating from that inner space of what brings you joy.
It's that combination between using our minds to create what we want in life, learning how to focus that, and also making a plan of action and sticking to it in order to create the things that our dreams are so hungry for.
Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Rorda. We're having conversations with psychic friends. Today I have with me Naomi Horii. She is a speaker, a teacher of healing and intuition, and a creative. She's a musician, writer, filmmaker, and a host of your own show as well, right, Naomi? Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Jean.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. It is so good to see you again. We have
Yes.
so much to catch up on as friends, but I know that I've been following a little of your work, and the main theme that I see come through so often is your lovingness, and I appreciate that so much, as well as your creativity. You share so much creativity with the world, and I would love for you to share just how your journey of opening to intuition and teaching intuition is connected to that creative journey and how much more creativity one can tap into when they're tapping into their intuition.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question, Jean. I believe that we're all creative beings and we're all divine beings. We're spirit in human form. So we all have this infinite ability to create, and the mind creates everything. So part of it is being able to train our minds to use that creativity in a productive way rather than, for example, creating what we don't want. A lot of people are sort of trained to worry about this, and put all their focus on what they fear, which actually just makes what they fear a stronger possibility. And that doesn't mean anything Pollyanna-ish, like we just have to think something good. We have to train our minds with that discipline to, when we get afraid, oh, this is never going to work, think about, well, what you want to create and how to make that happen. Like if you're born with a body that's capable of being an Olympic athlete, sitting on the couch for decades isn't going to do it. So it's that combination between using our minds to create what we want in life, learning how to focus that, and also making a plan of action and sticking to it in order to create the things that our dreams are so hungry for.
I love that. I love that you brought in discipline. Did you actually use that word? Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it's discipline.
I think I did.
Yeah. Because with the Olympic athlete example, there's so much physical training involved with that and discipline, of course, to continue that practice. But it's also so much the discipline of the mind and being really aware of those thoughts that are veering into a direction that, oh, maybe I don't want to really create that. And so it's not about, ignoring those fears, but noticing, oh, yeah, there's that fear coming in, and I can redirect that train of thought to the direction that you want. Yeah, love that.
Exactly. I think it's so important to recognize we have so much power as creative beings, but a lot of times people are creating what they don't want, what they're resisting, and they don't even know how much they're doing it. For example, if someone maybe had a history of, oh, they had a partner cheat on them, right? And then they take that trauma into every relationship. Oh no, are you going to cheat on me? Are you going to cheat on me? And even though their partner may be completely loyal and faithful, that mistrust, distrust creates a division between them. And at one point it's like, okay, you think I am anyways. I'm just gonna do it, and they're like, oh no, how could this happen to me? And yet they were consistently creating a result that they feared the whole time, and don't even know how much they're contributing to it. So I think as creative beings, we have a responsibility to really be aware how our own actions, how our own thoughts contribute to what we create in our life, whether it's creative projects or our relationships or our health or anything.
Absolutely. That can be a tough pill to swallow, so to speak. I think what you're pointing out about the patterns, and if we have an experience and then we don't let go of that experience, we don't heal that trauma, it carries forth and recreates those patterns. And that can be difficult to come to terms with because it's not about blaming ourselves, like I'm a bad creator or or I'm just recreating this because we aren't consciously doing it, right? If
Exactly.
with your example of someone whose relationships keep repeating a certain pattern of distrust,
Hmm.
that person's not going into the next relationship consciously thinking, I would really like to repeat this pattern.
Yeah.
Most likely thinking the opposite, but it's those subconscious thoughts of that memory or in that trauma from the previous one. So that's where really coming to terms with the contents of our own mind and bringing awareness to the contents of our own mind so that we can create consciously and forgive ourselves. It's not like we're going to get it right every time.
That we're
Yeah.
masterpieces in progress. And as you point out, and I speak with this a lot with my clients and students, most of it is in the subconscious. So we have to do our work and bring that out into our conscious awareness so that we can change it. Because if we keep all that energy and the fears and the shadow stuff that keeps creating those patterns that we don't want in our lives, then they just keep repeating over and over, and we're just like in this hell we can't get out of. And so this inner work is so important, and a lot of people don't want to do it, understandably, because even though we're masterpieces in progress, when we start going into the subconscious and that old pain and trauma, perhaps even from other lifetimes of existence, or there's a lot to deal with, and sometimes it just feels overwhelming or painful, and we just want to stop. But that's the only way to create new patterns, is to get in there and just dig out the muck, so just let our light shine and create from that space of being a vessel of the divine, and being a vessel that's so powerful we can create into 3D reality what we want to create.
Really ties into that intuition informing creativity because that intuitive space really lives below the surface of our consciousness for most people until we really own it. It's there, it's operating. We're all intuitive, but it's not necessarily operating in a conscious way until we decide to make it more of our consciousness and direct our lives from that place. How has that worked for you in your life with your current creative endeavors in terms of the path you've been on of your own healing? How have you seen your own creative life blossom and really thrive so much throughout your life as you've healed yourself and become more aware of those subconscious patterns and brought them to light?
It's been quite the journey.
Yes.
Goes on, and it's funny, in this lifetime, I had so many things I wanted to do, wanted to express, and I am doing that, but the teachings involved in the creativity has been such an integral part of my life. For example, I always wanted to dance, to sing, and when I was 5 years old, my mother took me to a creative dance movement class, and maybe 5 or 6, and run, 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 leaping with the other girls, and I just thought, this is the most amazing, fun thing ever, and
Yeah.
dancing, and we'll just run, 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 leaping, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm a bird, I'm doing this, and I just it was so, like, I had so much joy around it. And then my mother came to pick me up after class, and the teacher said, don't bring her back, she's the most uncoordinated child in the world. And I believed it, and my mother
Oh.
believed it. And she said, I should have never taken you to that class. I wasn't good at that kind of thing. I'm not coordinated, and I shouldn't have expected you to be coordinated. And it was funny, like we gave our seniority to that teacher, especially Japanese cultures, like teachers know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they don't. Sometimes they don't, or maybe
Right.
they know a lot about one thing, but that doesn't mean they know everything. And when we just accepted that statement as truth, I became truly, truly, completely uncoordinated. It was in my, can't do it. I can't do it. And
Oh,
then it affected me, like in sports. I wouldn't try. I just like, hide from the dodgeball or the volleyball or whatever. And I really isolated myself in many ways. Oh, can't dance, or, just really hiding. And I just had so much shame around it. Like, oh, I don't deserve to hang out with these people who can hike or who can dance or whatever, because I'm weird and I'm
yeah.
uncoordinated. It just became,
Chord that really stuck. Like I felt that when you said when
yeah,
you shared that because I saw all your joy, but then apparently that teacher didn't see
yeah. And
that was so important for you and that the joy was what mattered so much.
yeah, exactly. And it was interesting because Michael Tamura, who I studied with, and you know him, and he gave me a reading once, and he said, "Oh, you came here to dance, so you should dance even if it's just in your room, listening to your favorite songs." And I told him what happened with that teacher, and he said it had nothing to do with you being coordinated or not. It had to do with you had so much joy and freedom and expressiveness, and she couldn't control that energy, and she just had to squash it down. And I realized he was right. And then, I started taking some dance classes, and I'm like, oh, actually I'm not horrible at this. Of course, decades of dancing and stuff,
Yeah.
movement to catch up on, because I hadn't grown up doing it regularly. But I'm like, when I'm relaxed, when I'm having fun, I can do this. But it just it took so long to dismantle that, and it was kind of just this weird theme throughout my life and stuff of the creative expression piece. But because it was just this huge desire in me to express myself in so many ways, like it pushed me to do things that I didn't want to do. Because it's funny, because I have an astrological consultant who's so wonderful, and she told me, it's your cosmic joke is you just want to hide in the house with your sweats and your dogs and your cats stuff, but you have, like, every single one of your dreams requires a huge number of people to do. Like when I was doing the literary and arts journal, and all the different things in my life, it does require more than just me. So that was the thing that had to make me go out into the world, and that's part of my job too, because one of the things I am as a spirit, as a soul, is I'm a hub of human connection. So good luck to me if I just want to stay in my house, not talking to anyone, because that's not really why I came here. And the whole piece about love that you mentioned, and thank you for recognizing that as a theme when you were thinking about my work, because I have spent my life really, and of course I'm a work in progress, but trying to be love, to love unconditionally, to allow myself to be loved unconditionally and stuff. And it's scary, but I feel like over time it's easier and easier. And even 2 decades ago, I was given a prognosis of a 7% chance of survival of a rare and aggressive cancer. And cancer and any kind of autoimmune disease on an energetic level is basically anti-self energy. And what is anti-self energy? It's anti-love, and or maybe we can love others, but we put their needs first or whatever, but we put our needs last. And, that's part of that anti-self energy. So to really heal from that, I had to dismantle all those ways of thinking, of putting myself last, and love myself exactly as I am. And I'm, still learning so many things through this creative journey, but over time I just have so much excitement about doing it, and then learning to just do it because I love it and it's fun. And then that in itself is like attracting people who want to know about my work, or listen to my work, or read my work. It's about me honoring what I have to say. And it's been interesting too, because I worked as a pianist basically since I was 10. I started accompanying violinists, and then I was, playing little events here and there. And then when I was in high school, I started working as a pianist at an Italian restaurant, and then a country club, and then being in
Oh, that's
bands
so
and
great.
stuff. But it's like that's been such a journey for me too, because I grew up classically trained as a pianist. But in some ways, I feel like my life has been like this parrot, expected to just play what people want, play it exactly how it was written or whatever, or say the things that people want you to say, or accept things that I don't agree with. But I didn't come here to be a parrot. I came here to express myself, and that's what creativity is. And we all have that gift. Some people, not me, have this ability, like when they're creative, they create a beautiful home and soothing colors and coziness and nooks and or delicious baked goods or stews or whatever they make. Some people do it by expressing themselves through their clothing, the colors they wear, or the shapes of things. And we all are so creative. And I think it's important to take a moment to just recognize the different ways that we are creative, because I've met so many people that, oh, I'm not creative at all. No, that's not true. We all are creative. We're creating something, and sometimes we don't value that mode. But can you imagine if everyone just had homes full of chaos and colors that don't go together or whatever, and maybe they're used to having that, but if they didn't have that, they'd really feel different in their body. Oh, I feel depressed, I
Right.
feel anxious, because everything's jangly in their home, and whatever. So I think it's important for us to recognize our creativity and to really validate it, because it's precious.
So precious. One of the things I was observing when you were sharing about how when you create it would attract people to you is just the authenticity. Like that's what I was seeing. They're attracted to your authenticity because you're creating from that inner space of what brings you joy. And so if we're all creating from that way, it's authentic. But I think as you named, some people don't see or value their own creativity because maybe it's not something that society values or names as creative. Sometimes we don't see that, like you said, just expressing yourself in the way that you dress or that you create in the home. Those are a lot of ways that people can be creative that aren't necessarily recognized or validated out there. Yet if it's authentic to you, it brings people to you and it creates a spark in your life that can then turn into a beautiful fire of your own creative expression. So yeah, I just wanted to name that authenticity that I was seeing is so beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Jean. And I feel like just kind of watching from afar all these years, and I just see you just making a beautiful family, and now you're having this wonderful podcast. And I think you bring so much to it and hold space for everyone to be authentic, because you're living that too. And it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, authenticity is something that just naturally arises, when we know ourselves. I think it's difficult for someone to be authentic. It's not something you can force, right? It's just you're getting to know yourself and really being who and what you are. And yeah, it's so important. And it's not something we're really taught
Yeah.
growing up. And a lot in the world is about, like you were saying, in certain cultures and in so many cultures, there's that you should say what you're expected to say, or do what you're expected to do. There's a lot of rules and some of them spoken, some of them unspoken around how we're supposed to express or what we're supposed to express, who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be. And so to really let go of some of those conditionings that we all receive, whether it's from our parents and just their own expectations or a school environment or a broader cultural environment, there's so much of that conditioning where if we're living according to that conditioning, we're not being authentic most of the time. We're not really following our own inner voice and inner creative spark. So it's a lot to unlearn and also train the mind, right, to seek that out.
Yeah.
and to let go of the old stories and create a new one. So you mentioned something very profound, Naomi. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your healing journey with your diagnosis and what you went through in healing, like what path you chose for yourself and all of the layers of that healing? Because I love that you touched on right away that the underlying spiritual or mental and emotional layers of a diagnosis, how you mentioned cancer and autoimmune has to do with anti-self, right? Anti-love. And that's difficult, I think, for people to hear. It might be like, ouch. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
One is willing to come into a diagnosis like that with that openness for self-acceptance and healing. It can be such a profound journey because obviously you're still here with us. That diagnosis was not correct.
Right. Right. Right.
But you really approached it, I think, from a very loving and self-empowered way, and I'd love for folks to hear about that.
Yeah. So I was doing a literary and arts nonprofit organization, which I love, to promote appreciation of diverse cultures and backgrounds and experiences through literature and art. And it was like my baby, and we published incredible writers like Isabel Allende, Sherman Alexie, Allen Ginsberg, along with new and emerging writers and artists. We also hosted a literary salon. We'd have different readers come and read their work, and then we'd follow them by open mics and potlucks. And it was so like, I was so happy doing that because it was just creating community through art and just the chance to express our voices and our experiences and just hang around with other people that love the same things, and some people would just go and listen. And that was so beautiful too, because we were just all creating this energy and this experience together. But it was so much work. Like, we just get so many boxes of mail arriving constantly because we get thousands and thousands and thousands of submissions constantly from people who wanted to have their work published. And we took probably less than 3%, maybe even less than that, of what was accepted, but everything had to be read, responded to, and logged in the database. And it was so much work, and I know a lot of parents sacrifice themselves a lot for their kids, and it gets really hard to find that balance of taking care of themselves versus being a good parent, being there for their kids' needs and stuff. And I feel like even though my baby was like an inanimate, thing, like,
Small
oh
baby.
God, it's so hard for parents to manage that balance. But I think it's so essential, whether we're caretaking children or our aging parents or someone who's sick in our household or a friend or whatever, to find that balance of taking care of ourselves. And it was wild, actually, because I was in the ER a couple times for pain, and they thought it was fibroids. But actually, so I'll tell you what happened. So I had an office manager working for the nonprofit, and then she called me one weekend and she said, I was just meditating and I had this revelation. And I said, what was your revelation? And she said, you need to quit the journal or you're going to die. And I'm like, whoa, I have to meditate on that. I have to sit on that. And I said, I'm planning on giving it over next year after I make it, ready to give over in a more proper form, or, and he's like, not next year, not next month, not next week. You need to quit now or you're going to die. And then when I meditated, I realized, oh, she's right. And then a part of me was like maybe I could get a couple more issues out before I go. And then I'm like, what am I saying? Do I love myself so little, and I felt like I did love myself, but I loved the journal more. I loved what we were doing for the authors. I loved the community. And then I have to love myself the most. And if I'm not here, if I'm not doing things to take care of myself, I'm not going to be helping anybody or contributing. And I also had to work through some pictures too of, it's like, as a creator, whether you're a writer, musician, an artist, in whatever way you create, sometimes we have these beliefs about what does my work have to look like to have value in the world. And we forget that Like, even if you write a manuscript and it doesn't get published, we are actually shifting the vibration of consciousness on the planet just by thinking about those topics, writing it. It's already changed the consciousness of us as a collective. We artists sometimes can have grief. Oh my God, I'm slaving and slaving away, and my work's not getting out there like I want, or my own. Oh my God, my journey with singing has been so another teaching experience, because I used to love singing, and I remember one time singing with just such joy, and it's almost like everyone just went unconscious for it, and it scared me. And then after that, I was scared to sing in the same way. And once in a while, like it comes out, and I have this amazing voice teacher, but she's witnessing my struggle. She's like, you can do it. And you're holding yourself back sometimes. I'm like, I know I am. And I'm doing it less and less. And sometimes like, oh, I think I've overcome my stage fright. And then randomly, like, I'll go somewhere and freak out.
Oh, wow.
But like, if I look at the overall trajectory, I'm more and more owning my voice, owning my music, more consistently doing a good job and stuff. But sometimes I think I am possibly crazy. I keep trying to do this, or delusional, or whatever. But I know that it's not even about the end result, although I am starting to get these amazing results. Like, I'm going to be doing a one-woman show in different places. I'm going to Mali and to LA and New York and various places that I'm arranging and stuff. But even though I'm improving and growing, and these opportunities are starting to come in more and more, then I'll go to an open mic and just tank and think, oh my God, how am I gonna do this? But something in me is like, I just have to do it. And it was funny because even, with my fear of dancing and stuff, my friend Jim, because he just saw my angst and anxiety around singing, and he's like, you don't have to go. And I'm like, but I do, Jim. I do. And he just looked at
Oh, no, I do.
like, I would avoid and run away from that pain, but I'm just like going in there, and it's been so painful sometimes, so excruciating so sometimes. But then I march myself to the open mic, and usually, like, have a blast. I'm glad I went and stuff once I get there. But I think that's part of the experience too, just following our heart. If you want to write a book, if you want to draw, doing whatever you do that really feeds your soul, and doing it in a way that works for you. Some people have this very fancy classic way of painting and stuff, and then some people have a style they call ugly art. It's very, yeah, it's very profound and raw. It doesn't necessarily mean just like some
Yeah, I
bad
know.
art, but
Yeah,
it can be very powerful too, and sometimes even more so than some things that are technically excellent.
right. That's why I laughed about the name Ugly Art
Yes.
because yeah, to me, art is just, it's not about the outcome. I mean, in our society, it has become for so long because we have, art displays where we're like, wow, look at this amazing artist. But it's really about the process of expressing yourself and allowing all those fears and judgments and perfect pictures, we call them, allowing all that to come out and to just do it anyway, and
Yeah.
keep expressing. I thought it was so funny that it's called Ugly Art.
Yeah, that's an excellent.
Right.
And then we have all these excuses of, oh, well, I don't have a good voice. But if you listen to certain singers who are cult classics, listened to for generations, and did they all have a good voice? No, not technically, but they have the most expressive voice, and you want to hear it over and over again over the decades, right? People are listening
Authentic.
for generations. Exactly what you
It comes back down to the
ex,
authenticity.
exactly.
And yeah, there's so many, I think, probably different ways that voice lessons happen and judgments about voice happens. Well, this is a good voice or this is a bad voice. But when I hear someone just in their authentic voice, it's so beautiful.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter what it sounds like compared to anyone else. It's just like that's you and it's like being expressed and it's so beautiful.
Exactly.
I can very much relate to your singing story. I love to sing, and I sing a lot, and I sing with a choir that's non-performative, just for the joy of singing,
Yes.
because for me it's about that. But of course I want to share it with people, but anytime that I've ever sang just alone, just me singing, there's so much energy, and it's like I can barely project my voice, but it's there.
Yes. Yeah.
But I have to make it come out because, yeah, I just experience everyone's attention on me in quite a profound way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, keep singing, keep enjoying that. And a lot of times when you have so much energy around it or attention around it, it's like one of our strongest areas. I mean, because look at you, how you use your voice as an interviewer with your own show, that is so powerful and it's going around the world and you have that power there. So it makes sense that there would be, a lot of other people, don't say that, don't sing that way, don't blah, 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 all their judgments of how it's supposed to be, but just keep doing you because it's beautiful already.
Thank you. Yeah, same to you. I'm glad that you keep singing. I love that you keep putting yourself out there at open mics. It's just like doing it. And you get to learn. It's such a learning process to notice like when certain energies come up that might shut down that area, and then just moving through that and clearing that,
Yeah.
and letting it be about the expression and the connection rather than the perfection, just
Yeah.
the sharing.
And it's
Yeah.
the singing is such an immediate teaching with the body and stuff because when you're nervous, your vocal cords are, like
Right.
that.
Can't ignore it.
Down the breath, everything gets blocked, and it's like this instant teaching of, okay, what is blocking this? Where am I constricting? What is happening in my body? Because the body tells you instantly when you're going, it's telling you, and then you can adjust it.
Yeah, it's such a good practice. I love it. I was also noticing as we were talking about your healing journey. Do you want to share anything more about like the after the diagnosis? Clearly to me, you immediately went into I can heal myself, right? So did that diagnosis happen right when you kind of decided I need to stop this baby, this amazing project that brought you so much joy, but was very physically taxing, it sounds like, or energetically taxing, just way more work. So was that healing crisis, if I can call it that, kind of like the impetus to like change courses? And then what happened after that? Because
Yeah,
you kept creating, right?
that it just changed.
New path.
But I did have to take time to really like change my lifestyle, lower my stress levels. And I was very lucky to have wonderful doctors and stuff that I trusted. So that helped a lot. But it was such a process too, because, and it was very interesting because after office manager, Beth, called me that day and I did decide to retire and I gave everyone on the journal, I'm like, okay, this is the deadline for which everything journal related has to be out of the house by this date. And that actually turned out to be the date of my cancer surgery. So it was so metaphorical and literal at the same time. And that was also the day of Katrina, Hurricane Katrina, and it was so intense on so many levels. And I had to really look at, well, who am I? Because I had lost myself, giving to the journals, spending every second I had, every penny I had on the journal. And it's like, okay, I need to take care of myself and I need to take care of my own needs, which includes spending some, you know, writing, for me, not just making sure other writers have a forum or a venue to share their work and things like that. So and I really had to adjust dynamics in my personal relationships too, because I was just not taking care of myself, even when somebody we knew she wasn't feeling well. So we went to go to take her dinner and stuff. And then we went to the store to get things. But I was so tired because I was barely sleeping for years, and we're like, oh, what do you think she would want? And then we were so tired, we actually left the store without getting, I forgot, and I felt so horrible. I didn't even find out about this actually till like years later, and I'm like, oh my God, how could I have done that? Because I wanted to, help her and do something nice for her, but I had no steam, nothing was happening up here. I was so completely, utterly exhausted. I just functioning up to peak, and there were so many signs where my body's like, help, hello, this is not good. And that was another piece I had to work through, is like integrating like my mind and my thoughts, my conscious thoughts or my unbalanced thoughts, because so I ended up having a hysterectomy for the cancer. And in my mind, I also, I'm not going to have a baby because there's so many wonderful babies. And if I did want to have a baby, of course I would adopt, because why do I need to have a baby when there are all these beautiful babies in the world that are looking for parents and homes and things like that. And the day before my surgery, my body just started like singing the most sad song without words to me. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And I just started crying. And then my body's like, I'm sad because I wanted to have a baby. And I'm like, but I was gonna adopt if we wanted to have, and my body's like, fuck you.
And its own agenda.
It's like, I am sad, and you're not listening to me. And not that I would have necessarily given birth to a baby, but my body was sad about it and I wasn't paying attention. I was just in my head going, well, that's okay, because I was well, I wasn't listening to what my body was telling me, and it had its own feelings. And even if I wasn't going to have a baby, it's like, no, I'm sad and I need to be heard and listened to, and I need to be understood. And that was like the only way that my body could get me to sit down and listen. And it was when it started singing that sad song, like just tears started coming out of my eyes, and I'm like, gosh, you've been feeling so sad, and I just wasn't paying any attention. And as healers too, we have to look at, every illness stems from the stuff held in our emotional body from lifetimes. And it's important to like get in there and feel what we're feeling. And a lot of people don't like to do that because sometimes it just really sucks. Because if we don't, we just start shoving things down and just gets more and more cluttered in there, and we're holding more pain or grief or invalidation or whatever. So we need to make the time to be with ourselves, to sit with ourselves, to have some quiet. And and it's not highly encouraged in our society. It's like busy, 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 productive, do this, and or if you want to be introverted for a while or quiet, oh, you're being antisocial or whatever. But we need that balance of time just to be with ourselves, to feel what we're feeling, and then we can be with people also. But we need that quiet, sit with our hearts.
Yes, it can be so hard for healers, especially. The next flow of healing for you was this self-care, and it's so common for healers to, we're givers, and we're constantly tending to those around us. And that was just a beautiful example of, oh yeah, I need to put myself first, and really listening to your body and all of the deep sadness in there. And like you said, lifetimes, like when we start to heal, it's not just from this lifetime, it's so many layers there. So it's beautiful that you said hello to that and addressed that. Is there anything else you want to share about that healing journey?
Just that it's a process, because I made so many changes, and and sometimes I go along and I catch myself falling into old anti-self ways of like putting other people's needs first, and then I just have to reset. It's a constant journey, and we're constantly growing and evolving. So that was an important part of that process. And then I started spending time to teaching the work that I do, including that helped me, I feel, in addition to my doctor's care, helped me get through this. And I had some healings from some wonderful people, including Michael Tamara, including when I went to the Casa in Brazil, just my community of healing souls that I know. But it's a constant journey and fine tuning of me, my mind, my life, and I feel like I'm definitely doing better and better. Although masterpiece in progress, but
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I love, well, it's such a loving way to regard ourselves, masterpiece in progress, because I think it honors the masterpiece within us while being in progress, learning and growing. It's beautiful. Yeah. I would love for you to share about your work and what I see as the centering around love and just how you see that in the times we're living in now, which a lot of folks refer to as the Great Awakening. And I think a lot of us are really aware of just how much light is pouring into the planet, how much this new vibration, it's not really a new vibration, but there's more of this vibration of love really coming online, so to speak, and really opening humanity. I'd love for you to share how you've seen that affect people, both in your work and how your work in teaching intuition and healing has supported people in really riding those waves of great change and awakening.
Yes, I feel like the artists are saving us all in whatever form that they're sharing their art. The process of doing art, whether it's doodling or journaling, or lately I see so many people just knitting up a storm of beautiful things and then sharing it with others, or even people, creating these communities, these vehicles with which we can work together, like next door, and sharing, oh, I've got a bunch of extra apples if anyone wants anything, or buy nothing groups on Facebook in your neighborhood, and like, hey, I have this table that doesn't fit anymore. Does anyone want, and that's like a way of creating. I feel like the more that we harness our collective efforts and abilities, we're unstoppable. We're
Yeah.
unstoppable as a human race. We can do anything if we work together. And I think the unhealthy ego is never our friend. In fact, it's probably our own worst enemy. And
Yeah.
and when we can put ego aside and not be like, I'm right, or whatever the differing opinions might be, and be like, oh, we're all people, we're living on the same planet, what can we build together? Because it's so much easier to create an energy of cooperation. Like, okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to clean the planet? Do we want to regrow forests? What do we want to do? And it's so easy when we all come together. My beloved took me on this hot air balloon ride yesterday. So that example is fresh in my mind. And
Yeah.
the group, had everyone help fold up the thing and put it into the cart. And if you guys wouldn't mind helping, it'll get done a lot quicker. And the thing weighs like, the balloon part alone weighed like 650 pounds, which I had no idea. And we all worked together, and and we got it done so quickly, even though it was so heavy and so huge. And that's just how life is. All are like, hey, let's do this together, and we had fun while we're doing that. We're laughing, just breathing the nice air, and it was such a beautiful experience to contribute in some way. And I think if we can focus on what we want to create, and not worry also about so much about what people are doing wrong, they should be doing, or whatever, and really, because it always has to start with us. And sometimes that's hard to look at, but like, if I'm resistant to someone or judging someone, of course, why would they want to cooperate with me? Or that's not fun. We
Right.
people.
That
Us.
judgment divides
Yeah,
us.
exactly. And just remember what joins us all together, because we have, in this country, in the US, we have so many families just dreading Thanksgiving together, or dreading the next family birthday. Like, oh, do I have to go and talk to these people with opposite views? But remember who you were before that. Were you a family that loved each other, that laughed and joked around and stuff? And if so, can you be that now? Because I really believe, if we ever truly loved anyone, that love never goes away. We are love, and if we can keep saying hello to that love that unifies us, and remember that we are the oneness of all that exists, and really work together, I think that That is the hope for humanity, for this planet, for all the species that live here with us, and not even, and just beyond that. Because of course, if something disastrous happens on this planet, it's not only just going to affect the Earth, it's going to be affecting other places as well, you know. So I think healing that division in us and saying hello to the love in us too is so important. And sometimes we forget, you know, we are love, and then we think, oh, I wish I had love. You know, what does that mean when you already are love? But you know, we're trained even by society, oh, you're so alone or whatever. No.
Right. It's got to be out there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And once we start owning that love within us, it just starts to infiltrate every part of us. Our songs, our voice, our writing, the beautiful food we eat. Like I had this friend who was a wonderful cook, but she was always sad and angry. And every time I ate her food, I would get so sick, you know, and I'm like, what is happening?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then I realized, oh, I'm eating the energy that she's in, you know. And so I think it's really important for us too to look at, well, what kind of energy do we have in us, and what kind of energy are we growing, you know. And that doesn't mean we have to be this cheerful, happy person ever, you know, because certain emotions, certain energies have an important use, like fear. There's this guy named Gavin DeBecker who I think worked for the FBI, and then he talked about the gift of fear. That was the name of his book. And he talked about, if we're afraid of everything, then how do we distinguish what we really need to be afraid of from the white noise
Right.
fear that exists? We can't, right? But yeah, we clean out the all the energy that makes us pay attention to the white noise, and instead of like, oh, I have a bad feeling with this person that's following me or whatever, you know. And then you can tap into that. But if you're like, oh my God, what if this, what if this, you know, then you don't know. Even like things like anger, I think sometimes we have this notion that's taught to us, oh, if you're a good person, you never get angry. But Jesus, right? Yeshua ben Joseph, he was pissed in different moments with the merchants and
Yeah.
whatever at the temple.
Right.
And sometimes the anger is a teacher to us. Like if someone's not respecting our boundaries, I was molested when I was a kid.
Right.
If someone's like touching me, and and you don't allow yourself to be angry, go, hey, that's not cool. You know, it's like, how do you know? How do you know? And you know, so anger is not in itself like a bad thing or a negative emotion that must be avoided at all costs if you're this enlightened individual. But I think it's the key thing to remember is it's important for us to not get stuck in that emotion, or to grow that emotion, to deal with it and not just stuff it in because we don't like how we would feel if we deal with it, or it just feels too much, or notions of, oh, I need to be bigger than that and just forgive or whatever. Yeah, and it's really great to forgive because otherwise you're carrying something along with you. But if you just stuff it in there, is that the same thing as forgiveness? No, your body knows what's in there, you know. So it's
That's
important
it's like it's
to look
overriding
at
that
it.
information. I love how you pointed out the boundary crossing,
Exactly.
because I
Exactly.
that's
And
what
then we
I
get
noticed.
confused.
Yeah, that's what I noticed about anger. It's like a boundary has been crossed, right? When anger comes up, it's showing you there's a boundary
Yeah.
that's been crossed. And you don't have to stay in the anger, but just to it's information. It's like something is happening that I need to address. You know, a boundary needs to be clarified, energy needs to be shifted to speak to that. Yeah, I love how you brought up Jesus, because it is a classic example of like when he kicked out the merchants from the temple or something. That was a boundary being crossed. Like, this doesn't belong here. This energy doesn't belong here. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think too that's another kind of, you know, the top of anger is another important thing to think about is delving into what's in our subconscious too, because sometimes we get triggered with by some, oh, that person was doing this and this, but sometimes we're just projecting our fears, or projecting, something somebody else had done to them, or we're projecting our own selves onto them. And we think, oh, I'm angry because they're doing this to me and I'm a victim. But sometimes when we really start to look underneath, it's like, oh, I'm angry because there's some old stuff I never dealt with,
Yeah.
or I'm angry because they're reflecting, lighting up a part of me that I haven't yet healed, or whatever is causing the anger. So sometimes it's easy to just like, oh, I'm angry because of this. They're a jerk or whatever. But really looking at, well, what are we angry because sometimes when we look, it's not even what we thought we were really angry about.
Right. Yeah, such a good point. There's so many layers there. So it brings up that old energy, if there's fear lingering in the subconscious, often that can, to protect that fear, we just kind of have anger about lots of things. So it's so important to look at it. And like you said, not make it like, oh, it's bad that I'm angry or it's wrong, but kind of a point of curiosity, like, oh, what is this about? And really take that opportunity to look within and see what it's about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of times people don't want to go look underneath the anger, because once you do, there's like grief. And I'm like, oh, it's so much easier to be angry than to be sad sometimes, or to be vulnerable. But that's part of the cleaning out process, so we can be everything we truly are.
Yes, so well said. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Sometimes that anger is protecting the grief, and grief can be a whole nother scary thing to dive into. I always see grief as like this well, and oftentimes when we open up a new well of grief, it can look really scary. Like there's no bottom to it. It just keeps going. What if I allow that grief to come out? Will it ever end? Will I just be in that deep well of grief forever? It can be a scary process to open up those deep wells of grief within our soul, because as we've mentioned before, so much of it is from past life experiences,
Yeah,
and there can be a lot
yeah,
of grief.
yeah, exactly, Jean.
Thank you for sharing about your journey, especially your personal journey with healing. There's so much there, and I think a lot of people can relate to just having a
Yeah,
healing crisis that
yeah.
really transforms our life and transforms our relationship with ourselves and with
Mm.
how we orient towards self-care and deeper listening. And yeah, that can be a challenge for healers. It's a challenge for me as a mother to balance my own needs with my family and my inner work and my work in the world as well. But just coming back to that intuitive listening to our own inner being and being curious and letting it go and moving into a new place of self-love, really centering love. It's very powerful. Next step for all of us. For humanity. And I also wanted to just name that I love that when you spoke about love, you included how that's showing up in the world as cooperation and sharing. That is a beautiful expression of love that we're seeing more and more of in the world. Communities coming together, people recognizing the importance of community, the importance of sharing, and just how much abundance there really is in the world when we're coming from community and cooperation and sharing. So thank you for saying hello to that as well.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Jean. You have
Yeah.
such a beautiful energy, and it's such a pleasure to hear about your insights, and because I know you have so much experience and training as an intuitive and healer, and it's so lovely to speak with someone who has their own show, being able to bring your experience knowledge to the interview. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for being with us today, Naomi. Really appreciate your presence, and it's been a delight. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on The Higher Vibe. We will see you next time. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.